Time is 7:12. The morning news on News Talk 710 KURV, live at KURV.com. You have any questions about your lawn and garden, your trees, your soil? Your green thumb is just pounding away. Why don't you call Barbara Stores, our garden gal? We are agronomically speaking with you Saturday morning, 7 to 9 a.m. and answering your questions. Barbara is answering your questions about gardening and trees and everything else. Join us 7 to 9 tomorrow on 710 KURV. Brought to you by McAllen Compost, Rivers and Nursery in Bayview, and Grace Heritage Ranch. We continue to be the subject of national and international news as we continue to see a flood of illegal immigrant kids come across the border, women and kids as well. Local charities doing their best to keep up with the human need, and it's very, very real, and it seems to be growing. The last conversation that we had with Border Patrol was we're seeing about 2,000 people that they detain in the Valley sector alone on weekends. Joining us on 710 KURV, Western Valley Congressman Henry Cuellar. A lot of movement taking place right now, Henry. We've got Mike McCall coming here next week. I know Texas lawmakers, the politicians coming here next week as well. Okay, a lot of bluster, a lot of political speak. We need to see some real action. We need some leadership from Washington, a reverse in policy, a message from the president telling Central America, you will be caught, you will be deported. How much closer are we today to hearing that from the president?
Well, certainly 2 weeks ago when we first had this conversation, I predicted there would be a lot of people coming in from both Democrats and Republicans. And certainly I think we need to be united to make sure that we come up with the policy changes. And I still go back to what I've been saying from the very beginning is that we got to detain and we got to deport. And if we can do the expedited deportations, removals, that's the best message we can send, because as long as they have the idea that they can come in, they'll get that permit, so that notice to appear, they're going to continue coming. I mean, the word is over there, and we have to send that message. And this is one of the things I've been asking the administration and asking the folks up there in D.C. We have to change the policy now. Whatever flexibility we can have now, let's make those expedited removals. I understand there's a 2008 law that might bring some complications, but if we have to make adjustments to that, let's do it as soon as possible.
No, and prior to that, we spoke with an immigration attorney who's the head of the Immigration Attorneys Association for the country. We had him on the drive home yesterday, and he was explaining that much of this problem, women and kids aside, Henry, let's just focus on the kids coming here on their own. But there was a Supreme Court decision years ago that is at the moment seems to be handcuffing officials from immediately deporting these kids, because they accept them, they process them, and they will release them to the care of a family member, a parent or somebody who is in the country legally or not. Will just release them to the care of that family member. These kids are coming, these kids are staying. And that message is going to get back to Central America, that they can continue sending kids on their own because they will be allowed to stay. They will be given a document to report to court. But as you know, we've talked about this before. They're not going to show up to court, or they're going to have a chance to maybe through an attorney to make some sort of excuse to try to stay here. But the chances are, for the most part, we know that they do not go to court. I'm afraid that we're going to continue to see these people expose these kids to very dangerous conditions, crossing all of Mexico, crossing the border by themselves, until something is done about the kids coming on their own. I don't see that message coming from Washington right now.
Well, again, it's actually not a Supreme Court decision. It's actually a 2008 human trafficking law that set up the procedures. There's another one, 2002, but the 2008 basically says that with continuous countries like Mexico and Canada, within 48 hours, the Border Patrol has to make a determination, and they can do the expedited removals pretty quickly. So the problem is not with the Mexicans. The problem is if you're not a contiguous country like the Central America, then there's a different procedure, and that's the little tweak in the law that we might have to look at. But again, there are things that we can do to make sure that we move this, because once they get in this immigration immigration system. I'm telling you, I sat down with the head of the immigration system yesterday in my office, and he told me, I didn't even know that even in some cases, state courts come into play. Can you imagine? It's not only the federal system, but state courts come into the play. So if somebody comes in for economic reasons, they can be returned. But if they come in and ask for asylum or credible fear, then that's a different process. Then the immigration legal system is bogged down without a doubt. And this is why we have to make the adjustments. The more changes or removals we can do at the border, then the faster it is.
Yeah.
One last thing. Male adults for Central America, a lot of people don't know this, but there are about 20 flights a week. 20 flights a week from the U.S. of adults that are being sent back to Central America. So the male adults is not the problem, but the word is over there, like you said, and will continue to be out there. You bring, if you're a parent, you bring kids, or you just saying kids by yourself. It's a different process. That's what we need to change.
That's the problem right now. That's what's breaking everyone's heart and forcing local charities to work overtime as well when it comes to the women and the kids. Well, so to that end, to process these kids faster and hopefully get them deported, I'm guessing hopefully getting them deported, because it seems that we are taking them in and keeping them and just flying them to other parts of the country and trying to find the family members for them to stay here. We got this processing center that's going to be developed in South McAllen. They're rushing quickly to get it done and should be open like in 2-3 weeks.
Yeah, by mid-July.
Yeah, do you know what's supposed to happen? Is that processing center to process them and find the family member in the U.S. for these kids to stay, or to process them and deport these kids? Which one is it?
Well, again, it's going to be a processing center, so then they the way it works, CBP.
So that they stay, so that we don't use Lackland Air Force Base anymore. We find a different place, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's basically, remember, CBP catches them, ICE transports them. If it's kids, HHS gets them. First thing HHS, within 60 days, usually takes about 45 days.
Okay.
They find a family member, and that's when it just becomes complicated. Again, I'll say this. The message has to be done at the border. We have to do remote votes and hearings at the border, because once you go into the interior or you give them the notice to appear, it's going to be a different process.
Understood. Yeah, that's the magnet, Congressman. That is the magnet.
I agree.
And unless we do a 180 on that, they will continue throwing their kids at us, and that's very, very dangerous.
And Serge, let me just throw one other thing in this that people haven't thought about. But hey, remember, right now we're doing the appropriation process. We've been doing things to address the issues with funding. Keep in mind, we're on a 2-year deal. So after we do this appropriation process next year, guess what comes up? If we don't make an agreement again, sequestration. Remember sequestration, how that impacted Border Patrol and how that impacted. So keep in mind that as we're dealing with that next year, thinking long term, sequestration kicks in again unless we do an agreement. So it's going to be a real complicated.
I don't think you're going to have too much trouble with a standalone bill to get the resources necessary to secure the border after this fiasco down here. Just show them some pictures and get them down here.
I
standalone
agree,
legislation, none of this capirotada type of thing anymore.
I agree, but hey, what you and I think is logic, sometimes in Washington might be a different thing.
Understood. Since you're going to be in town, listen, you want to stop by on Saturday, open phone, sit in the studio, and we can talk about this. You're more than welcome to stop by tomorrow in McAllen. Thank you, Henry. That's Henry Cuellar, Western Valley Congressman, joining us on 710 KURV. News, a service of Lone Star National Bank, bringing the bank to you in the Rio Grande Valley and San Antonio. Lone Star National Bank is the Valley's bank. As the congressman said, the First Lady of Honduras is touring the Valley, in McAllen specifically, going to be touring immigration shelters to learn the plight of thousands of Hondurans who entered the U.S. illegally. Ana Garcia Hernandez has met with the McAllen mayor, and she's scheduled to visit several Border Patrol stations in the Valley today. President Obama is asking Congress for $500 million for a training and weapons program to help counter the threat of the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, ISIS. The U.S. is concerned that the conflicts in Syria and Iraq are becoming an intertwined fight against the same Sunni extremist group. Gas prices in Texas, another jump, 2 cents for Texas this week. The average statewide is $3.52. Here in the Valley, the average is about $3.39 to $3.45, although some stations have been selling it down at 3:36. It's 7:22 on News Talk 710 KURV. The Valley's morning news for a Friday. Up next, the U.S. advances. Team USA advances in the World Cup. And in about 15 minutes, movie mom Nell Minow to tell us if Transformers is any good. She's a nerd. She would know. Join us in about 15 minutes for movie reviews with movie mom Nell Minow on 710 KURV. Sports is next. Sleep Number has introduced the Sleep IQ technology.